Okay, hello and welcome to the first Books and Beer of the new season. I'm calling it a season. That makes it sound like sort of quite professional, doesn't it? And I'm joined here by a great writer and a really nice chap. We just had a really good conversation already. Ready, Damien Vargas. How you doing, man?
I'm very good at the checks in the post.
Yes, absolutely.
No, all good. Yes, yeah. Very much looking forward to this.
Yes, absolutely. So you're somewhere a lot warmer than where I am at the present time.
Yeah, I live down in Andalusia, right on the coast in the Costa del Sol.
Oh, fantastic.
If people know that, it's kind of halfway between Gibraltar and Malaga. As I was saying to you earlier a little while ago, we had a lot of drama last week because we had a huge fire here, which we got to witness live. The planes and helicopters coming down, picking up water from the sea and everything. Oh, it's crazy scenes. But nice now. No, it's just nice and sunny and boring now, which is good.
Boring. That's it. Well, that boring is good. Can you actually see the sea from your house, or are you that
No, not quite. I mean, it's literally not even half a mile over there, but there's some apartment blocks between myself and the maid. Yeah, it's like living in. I used to live in London. People say, "Yeah, have you been to St Paul's?" And no, and I can often go weeks here without going in the sea. And people think you're living on holiday, but you're just living somewhere, working, aren't you? At the end of the day, so
it is that. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. When I've done sort of travel and worked at the same time, you do end up just going out for sort of 2 hours a day. But I suppose because you've been there years, and it's even, you're just used to it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I take it for granted. I mean, I sort of pinch myself looking up at the mountains and things, but it's normal now for sure.
Particularly with that 40-degree heat Celsius.
We only have it occasionally. Normally it's kind of averaging low middle 30s during the summer, which I can just about deal with.
Yeah. No, that sounds brilliant. And you've set several of your books there, or two of your books there.
All three that I've published are based down here. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one was called 6 Hard Days in Andalusia. It's a kind of crazy, fast-paced kind of crime fiction, heist, thriller, suspense. Mix of all genres, which I tend to do, unfortunately. It's quite interesting because I never set out to be a reader particularly. I've always written, but a writer. I've always written, but I never kind of saw myself as an author. It's about 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I moved down here. But this coast is full of stories. I can imagine there's a lot of crime down here of a particular kind. There's a lot of drug smuggling going on. I mean, Marbella, just down the coast, has always had its history of corruption and kind of British gangsters hiding there in the 80s, which informed my second book. So you just pick up the local papers here and you just see these crazy stories. None of it truly affects the normal people. It all kind of sits there in the periphery, but it goes on. You just pick up the local paper and go, oh, okay, there's 5 chapters written.
It's great to be able to do that, isn't it? And I always find that my stories start with a gem of an idea that I've picked up from a place, a story, a news story, or something, or a legend, a local legend, or some sort of idea. When was it then that you went, right, I'm sitting down, I'm pen to paper, I'm going for it? What was the impetus, and when did that happen?
Yeah, it would have been about 5 years ago. I was working for a company in Gibraltar, but we had I work in kind of games industry, and we had a studio in Berlin, and I was asked to go out there and spend basically half my time there. So I used to do 2 weeks in Gibraltar, then 2 weeks in Berlin, and did it for about 18 months. So there was a lot of travel, a lot of downtime. Once you've got out and seen everything, again, it's like here, it's normality. You've got time. You're sitting in an Airbnb. I remember the first time I was sitting on the EasyJet plane. I think it was November 2016. Kind of drifting off in that kind of sleepy mode as you're on a plane, and this kind of scene came into my mind. I frantically kind of wrote it out on my phone. No idea why I was doing this or why I was capturing it. And then during the course of that 2 weeks, I kind of typed it out, fleshed it out a bit more. Again, not thinking book, but this is kind of cool and interesting, and let's see where it goes. And then the next month, the next trip, another scene kind of came to mind, and then I did the same thing, and then it kind of it wasn't strategic at all. It kind of came together in a kind of confluence, and it occurred to me maybe this could be the beginning of a story in a book. And I knew nothing about writing, nothing about self-publishing. It's been a huge learning discovery, trying to get to where I am now. But that's where the first book came from, and that ended up. It took me about 18 months, I think, to get it live, and that was 6 hard days in Andalusia.
Wow, that's brilliant. And when did that actually come out then? When did you press?
So that would have been May 2018. Yeah. So so that's quite an elapsed time. But like I say, that there's so much to learn. I absolutely immersed myself in podcasts and books and courses, and you never stop learning, do you? No. You're always trying to improve.
And things are always changing as well, aren't they? What works? What was good practice last year doesn't work so well, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but the writing is the fun bit for me, certainly. And do you, is that the motivation for you, writing the stories and whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many ideas kind of stashed away in folders on the computer. I think the last count was about 50 that I'd call tangible. Could possibly be a book at one point. I need to live 100 years to write those, for God's sake. But I really enjoyed the first inspirational period where I'm a heavy plotter as well. I've learned to do that. So I use various tools and that kind of mind mapping flow charts, getting the arcs right and everything, plotting out the scenes, the beats, all of that. I love that because it's very kind of creative and fast. The writing process then is discipline. It's just get the hours in every day, get the words in every day. Doesn't matter how you feel, just get it done. But then perversely, I really enjoy the editing. I guess it's the perfection, but the English comprehension, make this sentence construct better, sound better, read better. So, and then finally get to press the button and work on the next one.
That's it. So talk me through that writing process. When you're sat down writing, how many words can you do a day? Do you do? Obviously you have a full-time job as well. So are you writing in the evening, in the morning? How do you work it around the other things in your life?
I found with the last book that the rhythm that worked for me was I tend to get up 2-3 hours before I need to in the morning. So often that's kind of 5:30, 6 o'clock. Mm-hmm. I find that my brain is just more kind of creative, and you don't have to force it out; it just comes. So it's usually about a 2.5 hour session in the morning. Then I do the day job. In the evening, I try and get another couple of hours in, and then sometime over the weekends, as much as it's practical. I think the most important thing is it's just every day try and do something, even if it's 50 words, 100 words, because it's about progress. So yeah, and the last book, total elapsed kind of writing time was probably about 7 months for me, which is my fastest so far.
Wow, that's quick, isn't it?
Well, it's nothing like you. How many have you got now?
Well, yeah, but my last one, my most recent one, Riga, is still not out, and I started that in sort of, January or something. Or the intention was to start it in January, and then that got delayed, and so on and so forth, and it's still not quite over the line, although it's close. But yeah.
but are you a plotter, or are you straight in there and making up as you go along?
Yes, I am. I am now. The first book, the first 2 books I wrote, I just made them up. I went as I went. But I realised there was so much overwriting and editing to do that it was so inefficient, actually, that now having a vague outline, I wouldn't say I'll plot completely, and it does change as I go through, but I sort of know the general thing. The general sort of, you've got an animal somewhere in.
I've got an interloper. Bear with me 1 second. I knew that was going to happen.
No problem. No worries.
Yes. Come on.
Oh, bless.
Yeah. This is Oscar. This is the downside of not having anyone else in the house look after him.
Where is he? I can't see him.
He's down here. He's all excited because he's heard another dog barking. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Let's take this opportunity to say hello to some people in the comments. But first of all, what are you drinking? It's an important part of books and beer.
Stop it. I am drinking a Paulina Weissbier Dunkel.
Oh, nice.
The toast for your book, the Berlin, which I read, albeit this is from Munich, but it's the closest I could find in the local superstore.
Very nice, very nice. I do like those Weiss beers. Yeah, they're you can't drink more than about 10 of them though.
My limit would be lower than that. Yeah.
I'm on a Kentish ale, which
Okay.
is not local to here at all, but well, I suppose
Nice.
it's English, but yeah.
Nice golden hue.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Well, I'm in a hotel at the moment. There's not a fridge, so I needed to buy something that I could drink at room temperature as well. So that was why that informed my choice of that. Right, we've got a fair few people in the comments, which is lovely. Alison, afternoon, Luke and Damien. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We've got John. Oh, John, how are you doing, mate? I hope you're well. We've got Martha, my new wife. Although I say that as if I had an old wife. I don't. She's the only wife I've ever had. There she is. Ray's joining us as well. Hi, Ray. How are you doing? And Steve Taylor is here too. Where's his? Hi, guys. There he is. Great to see you. Great to be back as well with the first Books and Beer of the year. Well, I say not really the year, but the new
season.
The season. That's the phrase I was using. Yeah, the season. Yeah.
Is it the Premier League?
Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah, we sort of move up. I reckon we've moved up a league. This is whatever the other league is. I'm not a football fan, so
It's probably the safest way.
The metaphor has gone there. But yeah, I couldn't face the disappointment. But what? So you say you write across all sorts of different genres, then?
Yeah, I know I should be more strategic if I had a more commercial hat on. But I think I'm someone that has to write what I want to write and what I want to write in the moment. So I say it's the first two books are certainly more of action thrillers. The most recent book, The Dark Place, is a historical suspense thriller. It's set in 1970 and features. It's kind of sort of based on reality, without going into too much detail. But it's in Spain. A lot of interesting people from Germany ended up migrating here after the war, and were comfortable and protected. And there's a village not too far from where I live that allegedly had quite a community of former German war criminals. So I found that I discovered that in my kind of travels, and I found that premise quite interesting. And then thought, well, what if someone discovered them? And then what if that person was a British expat who was a World War II veteran who hunted Nazis? And where would that go? And and also kind of threading in with that particular book the Spanish Civil War, which is something I've learned a hell of a lot about since I've moved here, but I knew nothing about prior to that. It's just not taught in England.
No, it's not. I found that really interesting because I was talking to someone about it relatively recently. I can't remember when it was, but they knew nothing about it. The fact that the fact that Spain was a dictatorship until quite modern history, was it? I can't remember.
Franco died in 75, and 78 I think is when it kind of turned into what you'd call a kind of modern democracy. But yeah, the legacy lasted. It still lasts to this day. There's still foster communal graves all over the country that have never been dug up, that aren't marked, because they have this kind of pact of forgetting. Basically, they said, let's forget all about that and not deal with it and move on. Which you can look at. That's a anvil, but people need to understand what happened and why, and to kind of deal with that past. And that fascinated me, and that thread works strongly for the book. For sure,
it is fascinating, and the idea that I think I'm right in saying that other languages were banned, like Catalan and Basque and stuff. They weren't allowed to. You were speaking Spanish and learning Spanish, and that was so like. Identity of minority groups was sort of forced out of the mainstream.
100%. One of the guys I work with is from the Basque region, and he was born just as Franco was on his way out. But up to that point, you weren't allowed to have Basque surnames. So I think he changed his name just after Franco died. But that was very controlling. I'm just going to deal with this dog. This is terribly unprofessional.
No. This is real life. Damien, I love it.
The writer's life,
yeah. I'll do some comments as you're doing that. John says he's on an IPA, which is lovely. That's good to hear that you're able to join us on a beer, John. Quite often you're on the night shift, aren't you? I remember.
Cheers, John.
Alison's on a on an IPA as well, which is lovely. And I'm oh, he's going to be barking out there for ages now.
Give me this is again. I'm so sorry, mate. Give me 30 seconds. I'm going to lock him in a room.
Yes, no problem. Do it humanely. And I've got to say a big thank you to Alison, because she has sent me some birthday beers, because it was my birthday 2 days ago. 36 years young. They haven't been delivered yet. I'm not at home anyway, so I haven't been able to get them. But I hope on Books and Beer next week to be able to have one of Alison's birthday beers, which is very exciting. I'm pleased to have that. Yeah. 36 years young, hey? It was a completely, quite an underwhelming birthday, though, because I was here on my own in the hotel. I thought about... Oh, bless. Oh, poor dog.
Back. I think that's what they call keeping it real.
You can hear him whining. Oh, bless him. I know we've got some dog fans, some dog lovers on the call. Steve Taylor has got several small dogs, so no dogs were harmed in this call.
So far.
So if he keeps moaning, yeah. Oh dear. So yeah, sorry, we were talking about the history of Spain and how that inspires your books, which is a fascinating place and thing to sort of think about. But then the newest book that you're writing is more of a sort of mystery comedy. You say.
Yeah, I actually, when I was writing the second book, I had that negative little voice on my shoulder saying, "You're not really, you shouldn't be an author, and what you're doing." And I kind of put that on hold. But then it was on hold, but I started looking into more kind of writing science and things like Save the Cat and all different methods. And I decided to write a screenplay, just to learn the craft and the structure. It really appealed to me because you've got to be super, super, super precise with those words. You've only got a few words to play with. And then you got to take out all the descriptive elements of it to really hone in on the arc of the story. So I thought that'd be a good thing to learn, a good craft. And I ended up writing this comedy, which is about, coincidentally, I washed up British punk from Coventry.
Oh yeah.
who now lives in LA. Is kind of wealthy, but hanging on to the vestiges of his celebrity status and realizing he needs to connect with all the people that he could have dumped in his past. And it's kind of it's a kind of buddy movie, a buddy kind of story. But again, I do like to have kind of dark twists and humour and where I can. So it was a chance to unleash all of that, basically.
Yeah, I do think it's important to, if you're compelled to write in such a way, to go and do it, to try new things and those sorts of things. Do you find that people read through? Do the same readers read all of your books? Will they read through the various sort of different titles, or do you have separate groups?
I think it's probably. I've only got 3 finished books, so it's a small data set.
Yes.
Yeah, and two of them are related. Six Hard Days was based in contemporary times, but the Dennis Stakes is a prequel to set in 1985 Marbella. The main character in Dennis Stakes grows up to be an old character in 6 Hard Days. So there's obviously a connection there story-wise. So it's only got a character connection. I think the Spanish aspect to it is a thread that kind of connects people. Like I said, if I was more, if I wrote just to try and make money, then I would absolutely do series. That's not criticism of you, by the way. I think what you do is very sensible. But I think as an author, you've got to write what works for you. And for me, when a story hits me, I've got to write it.
Absolutely.
I'll put others to the side that might be more sensible to write. Yeah,
no, there is. It has to serve itself, because it's such a complicated and difficult process that you can't.
Yeah.
It has to be fun, doesn't it? It has to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
Particularly at our level, where you're not making big bucks.
Exactly.
If you had 15,000 people ready to snap that book out of your hands, you could probably be motivated in getting it done, can you? But
if it's the means to pay the bills, then absolutely. But I see this as ultimately, I am building an author career, but I have very long timelines to this. So it's if I achieve success, it would become overnight success after 10 years.
Overnight success after
building. So ultimately, it's the passion that's got to kind of drive you day to day when you're tired and don't feel inspired. You to get out of bed and to write some words. It's the passion that drives that, not some financial mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting up early in the morning. You are, there's got to be something to get you out of bed and sort of do that. I think that's an important thing. So would you say? Go on, sorry.
No, I think, as you said, authors like us who aren't making big bucks doing this, time is a really precious thing, and we have to make a lot of sacrifices. I doubt that you watch me as much TV or have to do as many other activities that you would otherwise do if you weren't an author, because these are things that you've got to sacrifice that other people enjoy. So if you're going to make those sacrifices in life, then it's got to be for a valid reason. It's got to be for something that's worthwhile, as you deem it worthwhile.
Yeah, and it completely is in my mind, because even being able to do things like this and connect with yourself, who who has a similar sort of creative outlet to me, and connect with the people who are listening to us today, that is a payment in kind in itself, isn't it? Sharing those stories and sharing the things that you sort of create in that way.
It's a kind of innate need to share those stories.
So you're working on this sort of dark comedy, one that we're talking about at the moment. What's next? Sci-fi, dystopian, romance.
I start a lot of things and then I'm going to put them on the side. The next one is actually a sci-fi. It's a sci-fi. It's a thriller, kind of near future thriller.
Nice.
So I won't say too much, but it's kind of. The premise is basically, it's one that's been investigated quite a few times, but I think I've taken a new take on it. And that's, if we as humankind build very realistic androids, what would we as human beings use them for? How would we treat them? And I always have a kind of dark kind of twist to the direction I take things. So you can imagine kind of some of the scenarios there. But ultimately, it's about darkness and light again, and maybe humanity isn't constrained just to humans. That's just kind of vague kind of hints about what it's about. But.
So it has sort of it's like a moralistic story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do your stories generally have something like that, like a moral or some kind of message in them, or do you find that you generally write like that?
Yes, I'm not trying to moralize or preach, but I think that is a core reason why we read stories, is to help us kind of make sense of the world around us and who we are. The first book, I wouldn't say that was the case. It was certainly me learning my craft, beginning to learn my craft, and it was a fast-paced, crazy adventure with lots of weird stuff going on that people really enjoy. But it doesn't really. There's no kind of moral message in there. It's kind of the same with the second one, although it's veering more towards that because there's two brothers in there that take different paths, and so that's kind of exploring choice and consequence. The Dark Place.
There it is. God, that's quite thick, isn't it? As well, that's quite a hefty.
It's 98,000 words. So yeah. That is the basic premise behind that is we all have the capacity for evil, and what does it take to reveal that? Like I said, it features Nazi war criminals. So we know they're evil, and we can accept that. But it's interesting to play twists on other characters, how they can turn to do really, really dark deeds.
Yeah,
and contrast that. And we're all basically animals, and certain triggers and situations will reveal the worst in us.
Mm. It is nice as an author to have that sort of godlike ability to essentially do an experiment on your character, is what you're doing, aren't you? You're saying, what would this person do in this situation? And then you go, I'm going to make it worse by doing this.
100%, yeah. I think, again, in the early books, the kind of plot character thing wasn't kind of quite apparent to me. But then I read a book called Science of Storytelling by Will Dorr, I think his name is. 3 times I actually read it or listened to it. And an absolute key thing I took out there was that a really interesting story comes from creating really interesting but flawed characters and then throwing situations at them and basically seeing how they would react. And that's tends to be my approach. I don't start off with plot and plot points. I start with people and situations and then kind of string them together into a plot.
I've heard that as a good idea. You know, the character is central, and then the things that happen sort of test that character to their limit and those sorts of things. Because as a young writer, that was counterintuitive, I felt, because I remember starting with the happenings, you know, the twist.
And what happens in this story?
Yeah, it is. It's the way you think of a story, isn't it? You know, rather than who does it happen to, which I suppose, as a more experienced writer, is the most important thing.
It is, yeah. And we are humans. We're interested in the lives of other humans, especially as most of us have fairly mundane lives. We want to see what happens to the extremes and seeing those changes and what provokes behaviours and decisions is ultimately the thrill of the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Let's have a quick look over at the comments. I can see some activity going on in here. John says, "Happy birthday." I said whilst you were sorting the dog out that it was my birthday 2 days ago.
Oh, happy birthday 2 days ago.
I don't know if you heard from your Bluetooth ear pieces, but it was 2 days ago. It was very uneventful because Martha and I went to Scarborough for the weekend last weekend. So by the time I come back, birthday on Monday, I just felt like lying in bed and eating nice, you know what I mean? Eating plain, like boring food. So yeah, it wasn't a typical one. Ray says, "I've tried to complete an author's series, but difficult. Since several authors send me arcs bitters, I'm still trying to catch up on Leah and Alyssa, for example." Yes, I see what you mean. Like you miss, you don't read the whole series. But I don't think necessarily you need to read every book in a series to sort of understand how the series works. John says he's going to check out your books, which is great. Is there a particular book, is there a particular book you'd recommend someone starting with? Or I suppose it depends on what that reader likes.
Yeah, I my hand on heart, and pride is one of the seven sins, but the Dark Place is, I humbly believe, is my best work, and it's try that one, and I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, Alison has written that she really enjoyed The Dark Place.
Thank you very much.
There you go. And she particularly enjoyed Jesus Garcia. Yeah.
Jesus
is how they say it, isn't it? Yeah, in Spanish. You're right. Oh, and Steve Moore says, "Costa del Sol, Luke, I sense a joy. So prepare yourself, Damien. We'll be out there when Steve is back in the UK." And
you're very welcome.
Oh, hold on. John's saying now, this is remarkably helpful as I have a gem of an idea for a tale I want to write. Wow. That would be good.
Tell us more, John.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, we'll get you on the show. And Steve Taylor's talking about his dinner, which he normally watches this whilst he's cooking. I don't know what you did, Steve Taylor, whilst I wasn't on for the last few couple of months. Were you? You must have, dinner time on a Wednesday must have really lacked something. Not been able to watch this, yeah. So do you think all of your books will have this sort of Spanish connection then? Are you going to do some that have that are set in other places, that are set? I mean, I suppose your futuristic one is not typically set in the modern Spain.
Yeah, with the comedy, I say that's between LA and Coventry.
That's LA, isn't it? Yeah.
Nice juxtaposition.
Is that somewhere you've spent time then, as well?
I'd say I lived in Coventry for 7 years, went to university there. So some time ago, that's changed quite a bit now, I'd imagine. I've been to LA a few times for work. So the break will come there. And then if the sci-fi thriller is the next one, it should be. I don't think I've actually named the location. Actually, it's kind of future world, but generic. Yeah.
But is it? It's set on Earth in a world.
Yeah, it's the near future. In my head, it's in the UK in the near future, 20 years time. But I don't think I've particularly set it there from a reader's perspective.
Do you know what? I don't think there's any issue with doing sort of different genres and changing things up. I've got loads of ideas. I've said many times I quite like to do a sort of what would it be, like an amateur sleuth mystery, at some point. Yeah, like almost like a Poirot sort of story, because I loved those and I still love those today. Those sort of quite cozy small town whatever ideas. But I haven't done it yet. I've been concentrating on the series that I have been writing, which I think you've got to do. You've got to choose your avenues quite carefully, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you are going to jump genres, you probably want to do it under a different pen name.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, that's a lot of work in itself, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. I think a lot of the ideas I have go further back in time. So the Dark Place is set in 1970, the year I was born, just a bit egotistically. But yeah, I think if I was to write a series, and I have begun to think about one and plot it a little, it would probably be set in the Second World War or just after. I find that period really, really interesting. When all the sounds are settling and the new world is kind of coming into fruition, and new countries and new organisations, new governments, and the dealing with the fallout. That's a very interesting area. I mean, like I say, I lived in Berlin for a bit. That's clearly a marquee for what happened in that period. So that would probably be where I would write a series.
Do you find the research then of that sort of novel very intense? I know it's a passion anyway, learning those sorts of historical facts. Do you find that an intense part of the process?
I don't find intense kind of suggests stressful hard work. So no, in that respect. I guess this is when I say this is where that's come into play, because I've been a Second World War buff for all my life, since my granddad told me all these crazy stories. So a lot of that is already subconscious. I haven't got to go digging for it. What I probably need to do is fact check it afterwards, because the memory goes a bit grey and off on a tangent. And it's pretty easy these days, isn't it? To quick Google search, and it's probably 80% of the books I read are historical accounts, not fiction, actually. So it's kind of all soaked up in a sponge, and at some point it comes out.
I mean, is there a worry of yours to make sort of errors in those things?
Oh, yeah.
I suppose you do need to have some sort of dramatic license with it as well, though, don't you? I mean, where do you draw the line between the reality of the book and the reality of history as it is told and remembered?
Well, ultimately, it's got to serve the story, isn't it? Yeah. You can't err on the side of accuracy if it damages the story, because what's the point? I think there's certain things that you have to be more faithful to, like global world events, unless you're writing alternative history, of course. But if you get the dates of a war wrong or something, it's going to stand out.
It's clearly the thing, or the name of the deputy prime minister or whatever date, like a particular fact that is very easily checkable,
Yeah. I'm like you. I've got quite a good group of kind of beta readers who, a few of them who are just absolutely anal about detail, and they'll go off. Yeah. There was one example. I was describing a character walking across a black and white crossing with a stalk and a light on it, a button on it you press to stop the cars. And he came back and I don't think pelican crossings existed in 1970. I'm like, oh my God, what? So I had to Google it. And luckily they were invented about 2 months before. but that kind of thing you don't think about it.
No, you don't, do you?
Of course they were invented at some point.
Yeah, like...
not that it would have mattered. I don't think it would have mattered.
I really enjoy it though when people say things like that, and there's a couple of examples in my stories where that's happened. One of them where I spelt whiskey. I spelt whiskey in the Irish sense. Is it EY or Y? I can't remember which way around it is.
It's a word I always have to spell check.
Yeah, but I spelt it in the Irish sense, but the whiskey brand was Scottish, so it should have been spelt the other way. 99.9% of people wouldn't have known that, nor did I at the time. But then when this person pointed out, I was like, brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it. I'll change it, you know. You know.
Yeah. No, you really appreciate it when people put that level of effort into reading something you've written.
Yeah, and that is the benefit of the way we publish, isn't it? In that you can, you know, spend half an hour doing that, re-uploading the files, and it's better. It's always improving, isn't it? It's always becoming a better story, more tightened, more focused. You know. Speaking of that, do you read back through your old things and?
Not too much. I mean, I'll go through them multiple times in the process of editing. But once it goes on the shelf, it tends to stay on the shelf. To the point was, and I was actually dreading this actually, of you asking me about my characters in the first book, and I'm thinking I can't even remember their names. They're kind of, they are moments in time, environment, situations you have in your head. You're holding it for the months that you're writing it. At least personally for me. But the moment I finish, then it's printed. It's on Amazon. It's on a shelf, and that just drops out of my head and it's gone. And the next one kind of fills it. Yeah. And people find that strange. You can't even remember the names of the characters. I mean, no.
Yeah. I find it almost even worse than that. In that, by the time I release a book, I've moved on from that book months before. You know, for example, Riga, I finished writing that in sort of March, April time, you know, and it's gone through the editing process, through the process of the better readers. I've redone it. By the time it comes out in 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, however long that takes, it would have 6 months would have gone before I was that close to it. And yes, I'll have read it and made the changes and whatever, but you know, you have moved on to the next thing. And actually then that launch process, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because you've had the excitement. When I was writing it, I was really excited. It's a great book. And I still know it's a great book. I'm very proud of it. But, you know, I'm now excited about the next one. I've already started planning that.
And you need to be, because your passion is driven by that. You need to be in the moment with the book you're working on now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you have like a set launch process, or do you...
I mean, but my day job is basically digital product design management. So I'm kind of ruthless with Gantt charts and Kanban boards and things. So my screen's gone dead. But I use Trello as a software management project management tool, and there's hundreds and hundreds of things in there, all prioritized with dates on them. So I've now got a template, basically, when I launch, of all the things I need to do. You can look at a critical path. I've got spreadsheets with all the promotions and things. Because otherwise you forget stuff. You know, the day before it goes live, So
I know the feeling, yeah. And then you think, I should have done that. But I mean, I do now believe, having done this several times, that it's not really, the launch itself isn't that important. It's really a long tail, isn't it? It's about getting it out, and then the process that follows that is sort of the important one.
And it's bricks, isn't it? Each book you're producing is a wall you're building up and up and up and up, and it builds upon the others. So I think you do it as well. But in all of my first 2 books, I put the first 3 chapters of the new one with a link to buy it. So you're building upon. It's slowly catch a monkey. It's not about selling 1 million copies. It's selling a copy, and then 2 copies, and then 3 copies, and then 4 copies. That's how you build something sustainable in any walk of life. I think it's not about day one success.
I think you have to remember that, and that sort of business side of it is. It can be difficult, can't it? It can be frustrating and slow moving and all those things. Yeah, it is a challenge to sort of get that right, I think, or to have that patience.
I don't know about you, but friends and family that have taken interest, I'll say, hey, how many copies have you sold? And that kind of frame of reference is traditionally published books that they've
like
bought in their business.
You know.
And they don't quite get what you're trying to do is build. You're building an audience of people who appreciate what you do, and you've got to work that audience. You've got to give them what you want. You engage with them, talk to them, exactly like we're doing now. Build relationships. I mean, it's like anything. People consume things from people that they like, and that they resonate with. So, it's not about one-hit wonders. This industry. It's about graft and patience and perseverance, and constantly deliver something that the people want.
Exactly, and sort of have fun and experiment in the way that you do with your different, you do with your different genres, or I do with my different places and the different characters that come in and out of the story. I think if there was ever a point that I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, that would show, and people would know that. That would come across either in the way that we're in things like this, or in the actual writing itself.
Absolutely. I mean, we are predominantly digitally distributed. That's the thing that's empowered us in these years. But authenticity is the fundamental thing that has to exist in that relationship with the people that are going to choose
also
to
think,
read.
In a marketing perspective, it's become a bit of a not a dirty word, but like, you talk about big companies as being authentic. Oh, Coca-Cola, we need to be more authentic. It's like, what does that even mean? For a faceless organisation to be authentic. But actually, for us, when we are creating something that is something that's come out of here into a computer that then goes to someone that goes into their brain, that is authentic. That is the most. We've got this authentic shit down.
Absolutely. I mean, we're bearing our souls. We're revealing our deepest, darkest thoughts. My wife, when she read my first book, looked at me and went, "Where did that come from?" I lay next to you and is this safe?
I know. I know. I did think this the other day. Like, I realised how many of my like antagonists in my stories have like a deviant sexual thing going on. And I thought,
should we turn this into a therapy session?
Yeah. I thought to myself, I really hope people aren't thinking this too closely.
But you do. Yeah, you get messages saying, "Was that real? That story? Is that something you've experienced?"
Like, no. Why do I feel the need to give someone bad like a bit of a pervy sort of attitude? I don't know. Yeah. Right, let's have a quick look at these comments, because I've seen several coming in. Apologies if you've been waiting. I will try and catch up where we're going. They're talking about sausages again. Oh, John shared his idea for his story. I have an idea mostly based on some of my life experiences mixed with my love of dark crime stories, terrible events and deeds happening to characters, and, as you've discussed, their reactions. Fantastic, John. I'd love to talk to you about that in more detail, definitely. Steve Taylor says I'll write a book about it. Yeah. Are you talking about the sausages, Stephen, or John's idea? I'm not sure. Steve Moore has said, have I got any new T-shirts for my birthday? I think he's hinting as to what he might have bought me. But I have to tell you, Steve, I haven't been home for about 2 weeks. So I've got a few parcels at home to open, and if one of them contains a new T-shirt, I will thank you accordingly, or whoever may or may not have sent it. Alison says he got beer, so far more important. Yeah, I thank you for that. Although I haven't got it yet. Hopefully it'll be delivered next week. Yeah. And Ray says, although the author may have moved on, the final proofreads can be critical to a book launch. Absolutely, they are. And I'm not saying that they're not. What I'm saying is that by the time we get to that stage, I don't know if you agree with me, Damien, but I suspect you will. By the time we get to that stage, of course, we're going to make any changes and tweak it. But that general excitement that you get when you're creating the book is now on the next project. That sort of real spark, that you have. You're now excited about the book that's following rather than the one that's about to be released because of how long the process takes. It's not a bad thing. I think it's just the way it sort of rolls through. And I think that can be really frustrating for like young authors. I remember when I wrote my first book, I was so excited about it. And by the time I'd finished it and then people had read it, like I'd go, oh, Damien, here's a copy of my book. Can you read it? I'm really excited. And then I'd just sort of sit there at my email waiting for your reply, to see what you thought. But of course, it takes ages for people to read books, unless you're Alison or Ray that can read them in about 5 minutes, But generally, people take quite a long time, don't they? Because they've got a giant to-be-read pile and all these sorts of things going on as well.
That's why it's a perseverance and just self-belief are critical to this, because all the voices and they're saying people don't like it. Who do you think you are writing books? But you've got to stick with it, and eventually, touch wood, it all comes to fruition.
Yeah, That's it. Steve Moore was just, sorry to go back to this, Steve Moore just clarified, no, he was just taking the mick based on this T-shirt. I like this one, mate, that I'm wearing. He was hopeful. And John says he's going to start when he gets a reliable laptop. My current one is on its last legs. Oh, you just write it pen and paper, mate. I know a lot of authors that do that, even in the modern era, write on a just a pad. I think you can, at least get those ideas down. You said, Damien, that you started yours on your phone on a flight to Berlin. So,
yeah. Well, even just up in the hills, walking with the dog, just dictating. I might listen to a podcast or something. Suddenly, an idea comes to mind, and I start recording it.
Yeah.
I've got a recording of when I was dictating a scene for the first book. I was out with not that dog, my other dog, which is smaller. There's me, kind of the wind, and you can hear me walking over rocks, and then I trip over the dog. Stumbling and go, oh, bloody dog!
Lots of swear words,
Moving on.
When you dictate it, then do you dictate it just in like an ideas form, or do you dictate actually as it's going to write?
Oh, I see what you mean. A bit of both. Sometimes it's like a fully formed scene that when your brain's in that quirky mode where it's just making a film or a story all of its own, then it's kind of a question of trying to capture it. Other times it's more just you come up with an idea for a premise or a character or a twist or something, and just want to capture it because my memory's rubbish. I have to get it down rapidly.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I do it. If I'm dictating anything, it's if I'm out and about and it's just like the person does this, then they do this, then this happens, then this happens. It's not. There's no detail there. But I mean, some authors do that. They're full books, don't they? Just speaking. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Have you tried actually dictation, instead of typing?
No, I have. I mean, I've tried it with like the Word one. The inbuilt one on Word, and sometimes I get it, and sometimes I just find it easier to type it. Like I think it's a skill like anything. I think if I put some effort into it, I'm sure I could master it. But as yet, haven't.
Yeah, I've read a few articles and heard people talking about it on podcasts. I think, like you say, if you can master that skill, get over the hump, and then word count and productivity can, in theory, increase dramatically because you're released from this, and it's just your mind unleashing events and story. But not for me so far.
Yeah, it must be a difficult one. And there's lots of. I mean, maybe. I was thinking about it for sort of the other sort of writing you have to do in this, which sort of replying to emails and writing your newsletters and Facebook things and all that sort of stuff. I think it could be useful on that side as much as on the sort of actual creativity sort of side. But I think in a way, I don't want to rush it either. I like the fact it takes time. I'm not in a rush. I know some authors talk about, must get this done. And actually, I feel now, having done this for a couple of years, that I don't want that. I want them to take time, because then actually I think that it's a better product in the end, because I have agonised over certain things. Because all of that time you're sat writing, things are spinning up here, aren't they? Things are spinning, and new ideas are forming all of the time. With Riga, the book I've just finished and to be released shortly, I made a massive plot change whilst writing it. I planned it out, and then this idea just came to me about a third into the book, and I was like, that's so much better than what I've got written down, and I was like, yes, that needs to happen, and I made the change, and it's a much, much better book, much more exciting book for it, and I think that was because it took me, that was coming out as I was writing, slowly working sort of through the cogs, through the whatever you might call it.
No, absolutely. It's I had a similar thing with The Dark Place when I kind of vaguely knew what I wanted to do if that one started it, but it involved a particular plot thread that involved Nazi gold and where that might have ended up and how it might have been used post-war, which I do find fascinating.
See, this is a great premise. I've heard about this before. I've discussed this with someone else.
There's so much. Billions and billions went missing. But a far more simplistic kind of human story came bubbling up, and I knew it was more interesting. So I dropped the big kind of grand plans and made it much more on a smaller scale, and I think it's a much better story for it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and often you don't know where that rabbit hole's going to go, do you? When you set off down that, and it goes in different ways, and that's very exciting as a writing process. You know,
that's interesting. You said rabbit hole. After I typed the end in the book in the Dark Place, there's a page called The Rabbit Hole that's got some coordinates in it for the village where some Nazis may or may not have lived in Spain. So it'd be interesting to see if people end up doing their own research and see what conclusions they come to.
Yeah. Fascinating thing. And Steve Moore has just pointed out that our friend Andrew Turpin has written a great novel about Nazi gold. Yeah, his first novel.
It's up there.
Oh, you have it. It's a brilliant book, isn't it? It's a really good book.
Yeah.
That's his first one.
It's the only one I've read, but he's prolific as well, isn't he?
He must. Yeah, he releases 3 or 4 books a year, I think. But yeah, very nice guy as well. Steve and I have shared multiple beers with him.
Cool.
And have you come to any of the author meetups in London and stuff, Damien?
No, I mean, being based down here, especially over the last 2 years.
Yeah, obviously we haven't either in the last 2 years. But
and to be honest, again, I talked about those kind of negative voices. There was a period, the first 3 years, where, and it's a reason Damien isn't my name; it's a pen name, and I deliberately chose that in case what I wrote was shit. And there was a reluctance to kind of expose myself. To use a bad phrase, but
I get it. We're not talking, you know.
You're not a villain
in one of my stories,
no.
You know.
Or am I? But I think it takes a little bit of time for the confidence to grow, especially for myself. And I need to know that I'm at least half decent at something before I can go out into the world. But absolutely no, I would do that as soon as the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, no, we'll have to. And Steve has just commented there to say, bugger that, next meetup is in the Costa del Sol.
Right, I'm on it.
Yeah, you're organising it. We can stay in that village. The coordinates are in the back of the Dark Place.
If they let me there.
Yeah, that's it. You know, no, I did have a thought about this because my books are in my real name, and I did wonder, because a lot of them have a little bit of a sort of political, you know, they're fun and light-hearted, but they're still, you can't help but be a little bit sort of politically critical, I think, in writing anyway. And I did often wonder of, you know, sort of turning up at the border post of some Asian country and 2 burly, you know, guards come out and are like, have got some dog-eared paperback copy of one of my books. Yeah. Is this you?
Yeah.
You know.
Have you been to Russia?
Yeah, I haven't. I would love to set a book in Russia. In fact, Steve Taylor is setting his next book in Russia at the moment. His internet research must be absolutely through the roof about all sorts of strange Russian things. But I'd love to.
It's true though. I think it's my most recent, one of my most recent newsletters. Well, it was the anniversary of the 9/11, and I said, as an author, I don't do politics. I don't think it's as my author personality. It's my place to do that. The characters do it for you, and they can express a range of views, and that's their role. I try to keep the personal me and the author me quite separate in that respect, at least.
But I mean, I think it is hard not to be political in some sense, in that your beliefs come through in your writing, don't they? Your ideas about good and evil and what is good, those two things. Yeah. I mean, unless you're writing a real banal fairy tale, it's hard for those sorts of beliefs not to permeate into the story in some way. But I suppose you don't make them explicit and say, "Hey, this is who I'm voting for. Everyone else is rubbish." You know, like
exactly. I would differentiate moralistic and political.
Yes. True.
So, I've taken a few references out to certain political people and parties in some of the books already, because I don't think it serves a purpose. You know, the corrupt politicians are corrupt politicians. Doesn't matter what party they belong to. You know, the story is about the person and their morals. And people are fundamentally interested in kind of moral conflict and the dramas that it creates when you force that out of people. So that's a bit more moralistic direction is a fundamental part of it. But like I say, I personally choose to keep the political side out of it.
Do you, with your historical novels, though, do you change the names of political figures historically, or do you keep those in? You know, like the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, you'd put him in, or Hitler or Stalin or whoever, you know, would they be named?
Absolutely, at kind of macro level, yeah, because that's world history, and that's setting the environment in which our characters are. But then at like a lower level, so in The Dark Place, there's one particular Nazi war criminal who served at several concentration camps. He's based on a real character, or a couple of characters really, but rather than use the actual people, it's a fictional version of them. So at macro level, you have to, because that puts you in the space, time, the world. Yeah. I did worm in Ian Fleming into one scene. I couldn't resist it. So he's kind of a secondary character that the main character interacts with. At the time, he was in the Marines serving underneath him, the 30 Assault Unit. I couldn't resist putting Ian Fleming in there. A few people noticed it.
I love that, and I think that's really important. I love those sorts of details, you know, and it's those sort of things that, whilst a lot of people wouldn't notice, for those people that do notice, it really connects them to you, and it really shows them that you've actually sort of done the homework.
There's a lot of little Easter eggs in my books. So that noisy hound that was here earlier, who's now quieting down.
Yeah, he's quieting down. Yeah,
he's in the most recent book, Oscar, the brown Labrador from hell.
Oh, fantastic! Oh no, he heard you.
Yeah.
It started again. Oh dear. Damien, this has been absolutely fantastic. I've loved talking to you, and we will hopefully make it over and do some party in the Costa del Sol, as Steve Moore has suggested. We'll make a plan.
It would be absolutely awesome. There's quite an author community down here, actually. So
really?
we can make it into a thing.
Yes, absolutely. Like author business, you know.
Authors in the sun.
That's it. Authors in the sun. Yeah.
Behaving badly.
Yeah. Alison has thrown a random question into the mix just to finish off, like she does enjoy doing. Is your author signature different from your everyday signature? Good question. I think she's thinking that because, you know, she's going to be like, right, I'll get a signed book and then I'll get a check.
Fortune checks.
Right, you know.
That's where my mind went as well. Yeah.
Then I'll copy it.
And do they use the same PIN number on their debit cards? And what was their first address they were born in? Yeah.
That's true.
I do have a Damien Vargas signature, and I confess to spending about an hour trying to craft it. Yeah.
And I suppose, because of you, it's a completely different name, isn't it? In fact, that's a question. How did you come up with the pen name? What was the? And I'll answer it for you, Alison, in a moment.
I wanted a name that was synonymous, or that had a Spanish sound to it. So the surname, my real surname is actually quite Mediterranean, but it's not the same. So I went through a whole range of different Christian names and surnames to come up with a combination that I think worked, that resonated, that wasn't already there. Although I did find a lawyer in New York called Damien Vargas. So unfortunately, he's got the domain name, DamienVargas.com. Git.
Damn it. Yeah. No, that's it. That's it. I mean, that's another thing, isn't it? With being able to choose, is you can choose something that's quite Google friendly and all those sorts of things. I mean, you came up when I googled you earlier. You were on the first page, which is better than being like Tim Smith or something. Where you're right down at the bottom. Yeah. And in answer to your question, Alison, no, my author signature is different because in my actual signature, I just do my initials in a funny way. Because I was a teacher for several years, and I found that before that, my signature was quite complicated. And I found that when I became a teacher, because you've got to sign so many things all of the time, from like homework slips to kids leaving the class, I just started doing a really quick one, and then that sort of followed through to all other things as well. But obviously, I don't think, because it's not really legible, I don't think that really stands up when I sign it in books, because it doesn't really mean it's just 2 letters, so I actually write my name out properly.
I've got a little anecdote, if you'll allow me 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, we don't know.
One of my favourite books of stories of all time.
Yes.
One that influenced The Dark Place. I looked for a first edition of it. It's not quite a first edition. It's the first year of printing. I think it's second edition. I bought this on eBay for, I think it's €12. I haven't reread it yet, but opened it up.
Wow.
Signed by Louis de Bernier.
Amazing. For €12.
That made my week, that did.
Did they not say that on the
eBay
listing?
I definitely realised. And I haven't told them since.
That's brilliant. What a great thing. Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed the beers. It's been absolutely lovely to catch up with you, Damien, and to meet you first
Likewise.
time. Cheers. Where can people find you and your books and all those things? Is just putting your name into Amazon the best place, or would you prefer people to go to your website?
Yeah, the easiest thing is the website, I guess, and it's DamianVargasFiction.com.
Yep.
And you can find everything else from there on after.
Cool. That's absolutely fantastic. I am back for Books and Beer next week with another author named Michael Pronko from Tokyo. And because of that, we're having to go a little bit early because it's 3 a.m. in Tokyo right now. So he wasn't up for funnily enough, he wasn't up for staying up till 3 a.m. on a Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So we're going to do it at 1 p.m. UK time. So if you're up for, and I'm not necessarily talking to you, Damien, but to everyone listening. So if you're up for joining us at 1 p.m, then please do. If you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. You can watch the replay. It will be available at 5 when you normally tune in. So that's great. Damien, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you so much. I'll see you later. Bye.
Adios.